Hope this year we will have more and more people and we may need more seats, right? And another good news for me and Charlie, actually we have been awarded with MVP. That is another good news for us. And so let's start today's thing. First of all, I would like to start with anybody who participated in my last session on deployment test? Anyone? So do you remember what we did? Anything about it? It's November, right? 2 months past. You don't remember? So this is a part 2 of it, but more focused on unit testing. Just because unit testing automation is again important part of our development, and unit testing is again another very important aspect of development, which many people ignore. Right? So we have to look at why it is important and how we can use it really. Make it helpful for our development purpose, and how to automate that with builds and all these other stuff. So even though you have not participated for my session, you should be able, right? All of you are .NET developers. So some way you are connected with .NET, right? Otherwise you won't be able. So what is the difference between a change set and a shell set?
Shell set actually
maybe you should not use the checklist. It is actually not fully committed, right? Shell set is not fully committed to your main set repository of your code. But shell set is actually checked in to the server and stored in the server. That is why it is safe, right? But it's not actually committed to the repository, main repository of your source, right? So that is the difference. Okay, so now you may be wondering why I am switching on a lot of VMs, but as you can see, we are going to use this environment. This is halfway implemented environment still on the primary domain controller and the FS server and build server, and one developer machine is running at the moment. Right? Actually, I have been posting a lot of information about how to set up this kind of environment using VirtualBox on. Actually, I have about 3 articles explaining how to getting ready with TFS machine adding to domain server. So, if you follow the series of those articles, you will be able to create a similar set of virtual machines which you can actually use for your experiment. So anybody tried downloading Brian Keller VMs? Do you know what is Brian Keller VM? That is a virtual environment provided by actually Brian Keller and other people for testing full ALM. That means from your software development initiation to the deployment, everything, all necessary tools are installed there, and there are a lot of hands-on labs available. But the problem with Sri Lankan internet connections is, if you try to download that, it's about more than 150 gigs, right? So you will never be able to download. That is why I actually I'm creating this environment just because of that. And to run that virtual machine, you actually need Hyper-V environment. So again, you need certain hardware to get it up and running, and maybe certain licensing. So this is I have implemented this using just VirtualBox, which is free. And if you have the necessary other software, you will be even you can download the trial versions and do this stuff and learn the basics, right? So those information will be available in the next few days. So just try to get these environments up and running, so you can try out the same things that I am going to show you here, right? So actually we will be continuing. I don't know whether I will get a chance next month or not, but I mean, we will try to continue these sessions. Actually, this is the part 2, the part 3, part 4, whatever it takes to complete the entire life cycle and maybe release management automation, something like that. I will be continuing. So I would like whoever who actually wants to implement these things in your offices, just create something like this virtual environment and try it out. That is the way only for you to learn, right? Otherwise you won't be able to actually gather most of the things that I am explaining in the real aspect, right? Okay, so we will start this thing. Few slides are there, so as usual. So this is what we have learned, right? Source control, check-in, check-out, change it, share it, all those things. And why we need CI build. So can anybody say why we need CI build? What is continuous integration build? What it does and what is the need? I won't waste much time because I have explained this. It's like this. You have your one wave, second wave, third wave, fourth wave, whatever, right? And you are checking in code to the central server, right? So nobody is worried about the validity of the code that is available in this central place, right? Everybody is worried about their local version, right? So the CI build actually always validates this central copy over the EFS checked-in copy, right? And make sure it compiles. It doesn't mean it is running smoothly and functionality is okay. It just makes sure the code is 100% compiled. That's it, right? Simply that's the purpose. Right? So it is really important. Why? Our people are very lazy getting latest version, and it's really happy with working on your local copies, right? That is common for every developer. So it's better to have a CI build. And I have shown you a lab environment. So any idea on lab environment? What is the purpose? Is it actually simulating our production environment or something like that? Is that it? What is this? Okay. Actually, we are going to discuss in detail about these lab environments and how to deploy and test INQ environment kind of things in the next few sessions. But at the moment, just keep in mind like this: in lab environment, you use to actually simulate certain virtual environments or even the physical environments you can connect together and use to test your application, maybe in a UAT scenario or maybe in a QA scenario, right? So that is the main purpose. It is not actually connecting a production server, right? Production server deployment is involved in a different manner. It is called release management, and release management earlier was done with in-release, now purchased by Microsoft, comes with Visual Studio 2013 as release management with Visual Studio 2013. So we will be going to that extent, but that is called the end time, right? So we have to first develop code and test it and deploy it. All those things should happen, then only we can go into release or production, right? So we will be covering like that. Okay, so today we will be discussing about writing unit tests. So anybody who writes unit tests? So we can discuss these things, right? So we will be actually looking at what is exactly a unit test and what is Microsoft takes and what it can do. And what is the difference between the integration testing and the unit testing, right? And how to automate this with TFS builds, right? So I will be quickly going to, I will be only explaining very simple examples. There are a lot of complex scenarios. I will show you one complex scenario how a unit test case is written. So by that I think you will be understanding how actually you should work on these things. And if there is any question, you can forward them to me. Right? This is the most common developer feedback when you ask about the unit test. Our budget is out, we are busy debugging our application, how well I am supposed to write unit tests. Right? This is just because you don't understand what is a unit test. Right? Okay. So first you should debug yourselves and start thinking about actual unit test. What is this? Right? Okay, I will give you a simple scenario, right? When think your office is sending you to Singapore somewhere for a certain training session, right? You are booking a flight from Sri Lanka Net, maybe Virginia, whatever, right? And so, do you want that plane to be flight tested before you fly in there? Or not? Are you willing to risk your life? No. Okay, what do you say about this one? The altitude meter of that plane. Should it be put in a plane and expect it to work as it? So it may show you are at 1000 feet when you are at 2000 feet. Would it be nice or not? What do you say? That is why unit testing is important, right? So that is the unit. That altitude meter is the unit, right? It should be properly tested. Separately from the plane, right? You cannot put it in the plane and test it, right? There should be an independent test. Then only it should be fixed to the plane, right? So each and every component in that kind of aeroplane should be properly tested. Otherwise, you are actually risking your life. So you are actually risking your customer's life. Okay. This is the basis of unit testing, right? It is actually testing individual components. Now, integration test, what do you do with the integration test? You actually test whether your components developed individually work together. Okay. That means they work, they collaborate or communicate and work together. That is the integration test. Most people actually write these integration tests thinking they are writing unit tests, and they complain we don't have a database up and running, that is why our unit tests are failing. Have you written unit tests there? No. Like if you need a database to run this, it's not a unit test. Right? Unit test, you should be testing only a particular component, that means that component code only. Right? And unit tests are mostly used only for properly design your code, not to debug your code. Right? As a result of properly designing your code, you will be avoiding many parts. So when you take something like this, you have user interface, maybe business entities, so business process component or whatever, and data access layer and a data layer, that means SQL or something. Now integration tests actually test each from here, right? Entire application components together, right? But unit test only test one particular area, right? Maybe it is mocking the other area, right? Mocking the user action and mocking the other area. That should be the way you should write unit test, right? If you understand properly, it is very easy to write unit test properly. Right? So when you look at how to write unit test properly, the thing is, like most people write these things, not integration tests, meaning to write integration test or unit test. Right? You actually write a hybrid. You think you are writing unit test and you need a database, or you need a configuration file, or you need a file system CSV or something to run your test. In that case, you cannot integrate it with build automation, right? It depends on a CSV. Then you have to find a way to send that CSV to drop location or something. Right? So when you integrate that thing to NPM, that what is NPM? Anybody knows any QA? Right? So when you automate test with NPM, it is not possible to send all these files like CSV, XML, and it's not easy. You can work around those things, but it's not easy, right? So that is why it is necessary for you to properly automate tests. So we will be looking at properly automating different types of tests, like unit test, maybe coded UI test. What is coded UI test? Okay. Okay, what is the .NET version you guys are using? 2010? 2012? 2013? Do you know coded UI test? What is coded UI test? Okay, are you afraid or are you kind of lazy after the holidays or something like that? I would like you to speak, right? Just answer a few questions, that's better, right? So we can discuss. So, is there any idea about the coded UI test? What is the purpose of using that? Anybody who has ever used coded UI test? Anyone? Okay, coded UI test, you can actually unit test your using coded UI test, as well as you can write certain integration testing using coded UI test. Actually, you can test functionality using coded UI test. And there are different frameworks like Selenium. Have you heard about Selenium? If you have heard about Selenium, how come you don't understand what is coded UI test? You are just blindly writing tests, right? Without knowing what you are doing. Okay. The thing is, you have to know what is actually happening, and then only you should do it. Right? Okay. Selenium is actually one way of easily writing coded UI test, even though it is said easily. Yes, it is easy to write, and easy to write it manually using Visual Studio, and then easy to run it, execute it using Visual Studio. But when you put it into automation, you have a lot of problems to solve, right? When you use Selenium, right? Actually, I am working on something like that these days. It's kind of a headache, right? Because if you have used MS coded UI test, it would be much easier. Because Selenium supports many technologies like Java and all this stuff, so they have a lot of answers differently, right? And Microsoft, when we go to MSC forums or somewhere, nothing about Selenium. It's only about MS tests and all those stuff, right? So it's kind of difficult. So first, before going into third-party tools for your testing, try to do things with MS tests properly. Then once you understand every way of implementing this automation with MS test, then go with the third-party tools, and then you will actually identify the problems that are coming with third-party tools. Otherwise, you will be messing around with problems in MS tools plus another third-party tool. So you won't be able to identify which is which. Right? Okay. So these are theory parts. Just don't worry much about these things. What is this? This actually basically should test a very small piece of code, right? And it should point to a particular functionality only, right? It should point to a particular functionality, and particular code action only should be tested, right? So you will see how you can do this, right? And it should definitely not worry about a database or any other dependency or CSV file or configuration. Okay. So if your system or the test require install and configure available database in order to run the test successfully, would it be a unit test? What do you say? Okay, raise your hands. Would it be a unit test? Who says no? Okay, you don't have an answer. Oh, you are lazy. People. There is only two options, right? Either yes or no, right? Okay, there's no in between answers, right? So, is this yes or no? Okay, everybody says no. So this is not a unit test. So what about this? System under test, go to the file system. What would you say? Is this a unit test? Is this a unit test? Yes? No? This is definitely no. Right? I told you, right? If it requires something, it is not a unit test. Right? So this is again no. Right? This. Is it a unit test or not? Yes. It's likely to be a unit test, provided all the other things expected from a unit test is there. Right? If you are using a mocking framework and still you need a configuration file, means it's not a unit test. Right? If you are using a mocking framework plus you don't need any of the other things, that means it's a unit test. Right? You have to understand this clearly. So if your system under test reference a service over a network, is it a unit test or not? What would you say? Okay, how many are developers? You guys are not developers, you are designers. Being developers, you should know these things, right? Otherwise, you will be in a lot of trouble. Okay, again, this is not a unit test. Why? You are referring to something outside. Okay, what do you say about this? If the system depends on system clock, is this a unit test? Okay. While you are executing your test, depending on the system clock, if it responds differently, is it a unit test or not? What did you say? No. If you say no, yeah, that is the correct answer. It cannot depend on the system clock. Right? This should be the way you should isolate unit test. Right? You can write coded UI tests as unit test. Still, you should make your business logic. Right? And if you are writing business logic unit test, you should fake the data plus any other component. So if you are focusing on a particular method, any other component or method in that should be paid or marked. Right? Then only you can actually test the particular code segment. Otherwise, you will be getting errors from something else. I will show you an example and you will understand what is this. Right? So we have to face this. Right? How you do this with Microsoft Paint. Right? Have you heard about Microsoft Paint? Was it available in Meetup? If you have not tried, start trying this now. Right? So what it does is, in actual environment, what happens, this picture is taken from MSDA. I hope you have seen this, right? Okay. You rarely go to MSDA, right? Because you don't understand. Is that the case? Is it difficult to understand MSDA? It's easy. This explains how actual production environment or development environment works. So whenever your component is requiring a system DLL, it refers a real system DLL. If it requires external website, it actually goes to the external website to get the things and maybe database. Maybe there are certain other components not yet built. Can you run a test on this? If you run a test on this, it will be an integration test, right? So once you require these things which is not built, the test will fail. Why? Since it is not implemented. So when something is not implemented, what is the exception that you should throw from your method? Then the way to fake things with Microsoft Paint, right? So there are two ways. One is called stubs, the other one is called shims, right? So shims are actually used for a different purpose. Have anybody heard about something called dependency injection? What is dependency injection? There's one thing called interface injection, right? That is one way of dependency injection, right? That means you are passing your interface, maybe iDrivable to a drive method, and you can pass any drivable vehicle into that, maybe a car, van, anything into that, right? As long as it implements iDrivable. So when you are testing it, you can actually mock using the iDrivable, right? So that is the way to use stubs, right? But there are certain cases where you can't change your existing code, or maybe the people who have developed don't like to change it. And there are certain system components you have no option to change. That means, for example, system get date or something. How to get date from the document? And now, then if you want to get the date, dot date, right? Okay, so can you change the code of that? Not possible, right? You have the code availability, but are you going to change the code? I don't think so, right? Because you are busy with writing your own code, right? You don't have time to okay. So, if you want to simulate test, now I said you should not depend on system clock. Now, if something is getting the current year, so how can you make sure the system, this thing, is not returning the current state from the clock? You have to mock it something. That's where the machines come into play. So external people, okay, certain companies develop software together. You know, right? So one company develops something and the other company develops something. I'll tell you one example. One famous telecom company in Sri Lanka plus one famous IT company old about 25 years developed a certain software which is together and blaming each other, still playing around, right? So those kind of things, can you push other people to write code in a certain way? It is not possible, right? So when you are doing that, you have to test the other people's code. I mean, how can you mock that? You can't use stubs, right? If they have properly written the code, yes, you may be able. But even sometimes you won't be able to see their code, right? They are not willing to give you the code. So in that case, you have only option of going to shim, right? So we can have a look at how to do these things. Okay, so this is simply the environment that I am using, right? This is a primary domain controller, which is having nothing but the primary domain controller plus DNS server, right? And this is Team Foundation Server 13 instance, right? And this is containing a build server for one collection, that is called demo collection. This terminology, I hope you understand right now, right? Because KPS was around 14 days, right? And this is my development PC, right? So actually, if you want to learn how to create this kind of environment, as I said earlier, shipment blog, I will be putting up certain articles on each and every point how to implement this kind of an environment, right? Okay. So this is up and running. Can you guys see this? You can't, right? Okay, this is the part that I don't know about Visual Studio. Do you know how to do this? Control plus
recording.
I don't have a mouse. Sure, right? So this is Visual Studio 2013. I hope everyone has enjoyed that this trial version, right? And okay, this is Ultimate Edition, but you don't have to have Ultimate Edition to do the things that I do right now. Right? You can do it with even premium or profit. Right? So I have created actually code taken from MSDN. And if you are trying to copy code from MSDN and paste it and run it, there are several syntax errors. You have to correct that and then run it, right? So these codes I have taken from MSDN just because I didn't have time to write my own sample, right? And I have another sample which I will show you, which is having a complex method, which is having some databases and all those stuff, and how to write a unit test for it. This is basically halfway done, halfway to code, right? It's a stock analyzer class, and it expects when it is created a field, stock field, and you can get condos or price or something. Providing the company code, you can get the price, right? Again, if you look at this stock field, right, it is not yet implemented. So you have the interface size stock field, and there's returning a new integer which price in company should be passed in. So once the company is passed, you get a not implemented exception. Right? That is how actual stock field is at the moment. Now, is it possible for us to test this analyzer code since our stock field is not implemented? Is it possible for us to test this? Okay, yes, at the moment, is it possible to test this stock analyzer code using this test? Yes? Raise your hand. Yes, only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Not possible? All the others. Who are not willing to raise their hand. Okay. Only those 5 or 6 people are here. This is possible to test, right? I told you, right? There should be no dependency, right? You should be able to mock everything, right? Because this is done with interface injection, right? So you should be able to simulate that interface into a class using the things, right? Okay. First, how to add fakes. Now, you know for time. Now, when you have this applet, if you want to create fakes assembly for this, how can you do that? Anybody has anything? Right click, add fake. Simple as that, right? So it will generate code for fakes, right? So I won't do it. I will just show you, right? Right? So it will generate fakes, and we don't have time to actually go through that fake code and see what it is, but it's better if you can go through that and understand what it is, right? But what I will do is I will just show you how to use it in your test. Right? So we will see how we can test this stock analyzer. Right? And there are 3 A's, right? What are 3 A's? Arrange, act, assert. Right? Arrange means you prepare your data, then act means you invoke, and then assert means you evaluate your test. So those things are basics, right? So don't say now these things belong to QA. Right? These days it's not belong to QA, it's belong to developers, plus QAs also should learn how to code, right? To do code and UA tests. Right? So you should be working as actually multi-skilled person, right? Not I'm a developer, I don't know how to test, right? That is not valid anymore. Okay. Now you can see, now when you say applet, there is something called fakes, right? In that, stub by stock field is there, right? This is generated by fakes. I am not actually typing all these codes because it takes a lot of time to type this, right? I will explain what this is there, right? You try to understand this, and we will debug this together, and you will learn how it actually works, right? Then actually what I am doing is, now in this for this stock field class, I'm actually creating a new simulated or mock or fake stock feed, right? Which will always use this get share price string as input one parameter, string parameter, and returning always 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So you know how to write delegates, right? So if you don't know how to write delegates, you better ask who? Jali, right? So that is C# basics again, right? If you don't know how to write delegates, that's not my problem. You should know that, right? So what I'm saying is these are basics, right? Now delegates were available from good old days, right? From DB days, you had some kind of delegate, events, consuming, all those things, right? So you should understand what is a delegate. So what we are doing is actually we are delegating this segment of code for this method, right? So instead of actually executing the get share price method implemented in that code, this will be utilized, right? This is actually anyway happening because we are using a star. But in the shim's context, this will actually, really kind of acting different way. Right? I will show you in the shim. But this one, we are actually creating a mocking class out of stars to simulate our actual stock feed. So it is not executing actual stock feed code. It is executing my initialize our component under test, and that is stock analyzer, and we pass, we call the method get control price, and we expect for actual value, and it should be equal to 1, 2, 3, 4. If that works, that means stock analyzer code is working properly. It doesn't mean stock feed code is working properly, and it doesn't matter why. We are actually testing stock analyzer, not stock feed, right? To test stock feed, there should be separate unit tests developed, right? Okay. The advantage is, even if there is an error or exception, as we have in our stock feed, it will not affect our stock analyzer code, right? Stock analyzer code still works with this test. That means if and only if stock analyzer code is broken, there will be an error with this test. So that is the way you should implement unit tests, right? You should really isolate. Okay. So shall we debug this one and test? So how can we are now here. Okay, we can see what happens when we initialize, right? We can press F11, so it goes to this one and executes actual code in the stock analyzer. Actually, we are testing the stock analyzer constructor. Right? So it should work, right? Seems it's working, right? Now my stock analyzer is instantiated, right? Okay, we will move on. Okay, now we are executing get controls of price. Look what happens, right? It goes here, right? Now, since we have implemented the stuff in our own testing method, right? When we call this one, okay, we should press F11 here. It is coming to, you can see, right? It is inside my test method now, and it is returning 1, 2, 3, 4, and it is coming here. Now the actual value is actual value is, right? So do you understand the concept, how it works, right? So this is not the actual thing, right? The actual things need more and more simulation code, but I want you to understand the basics. even this code in DHPL doesn't exactly work when you copy and paste, right? There are few syntax errors, you have to fix it, and once you fix it, it will start working. Okay. Did you get actually how a stub works and how we can simulate a stub? We started at 6:20, so I will be finishing at 7:20. We will be starting at 7:15 and it will be at 8:20. Now you will be okay, right? So there's another test here. What I will do is actually I will share this code plus I will share this code and even the slide there. Then you can download it and try it yourself, right? This code part I will not be actually explaining, but this is again we are testing more. That means we are testing price to return. We use it in a variable and testing, right? So you can write different tests. It's up to you, right? So if you debug this one also, you will understand how it works, right? I mean, this is actually within the method. This is assigned the company as company, and then we evaluate whether the company is properly evaluated. Now, why we have hard coded it here? Why? Can anybody tell? How it becomes the expected value? What is the reason? Just because our stock analyzer code is not yet fully implemented. It is still hard coded in the stock analyzer code, right? So if you go and look at the stock analyzer code, it is still hard coded, right? It should be actually a parameter here, right? So once you do that change, unit test need to be changed accordingly, right? Which actually you can download this code part and you can try out to learn the things, right? So once you do this change, it will actually fail the test, right? You won't be able to even execute the test, right? You will have to correct the test. So then we will look at a shim implementation, right? This is very basic method, getting the current table. It's returning date time, now dot year, right? Now we need to simulate this thing. And can we do some kind of stub, dependency injection or something like that? Is it possible? No. Why? This is not, the code is not belong to us. I mean, not this code. The code within this now method. We don't have that code, right? And we can't even change that code. And anybody wonders, like, what are these things? I hope you have seen many times something. So once you have DHPL 2013 and Visual Studio 2013 up and running, all these nice things comes, and even you can execute test from here, right? It's again to do things, right? So those things actually fancy things you will notice straight away. So we are not going to talk about those things. We will talk about important things. Okay? Now, how can I mock this one? We will have a look at that. To do that, again, I need to create a page assembly for system, right? So when I add that, it creates system for page, right? Why just for? Why the version? This means there has been nothing changing system.cl, right? It's the code, right? Actually, .NET Core is not, that core really is not changed. It is still at version 4.0.0.6. Okay, so you need to understand this thing, right? That is why it is easily working on different 4.5, 4.5, and 4.0. all this stuff working in 4.51. It's actually an add-on to the 4, right? 4.5 and 4.51 are add-ons, not new frameworks or new things implemented. Just add-ons, adding more new features. And I hope in next 3 months or so they will release update 1 for 2030 with another set of new features. Right? Okay. Now once we do the fakes, creating fakes assembly, we can try code something similar to this. Again, this simple example has syntax errors in MSDN. So if you want to really work this, you need to do certain syntax fixes. And this one, we first need to define a fixed DL. Why? Why we are defining a fixed DL? Because we are not going to depend on the system clock. Simple as that, right? Okay. Then there is something called shim's context that is coming with fakes assembly. We have to create shim's context.create. So whatever the code we are executing inside this using dot will be executed under the context of the shim, right? Okay. Then we can actually system means the system DLL, dot fakes means it's fakes assembly, and shim datetime now get means the now get method, right? So this naming you need to understand a bit, because there are different naming conventions in this fakes. Something called all instances, constructor, in the two kind of things are there, right? So I will explain a bit on that as well. But we have only 10 minutes to do all this stuff, so we should be good, right? Okay. So then what actually this does is, instead of executing real system now, it will be delegating to this return now. We will create a new date type using my year and the January 1st. Right? So that is what we are going to mock or fake or simulate. Right? So once we do that, we just initialize our year helper and call the method. So now this is actually expected to, even if you press F12 here, what should happen? It is going to the actual code. Right? It is expected to run this method. But what really happens is, since we are in the shim's context, it will be calling my delegate instead of this. Right? So we will debug this and define the method. Right? And when we say 11, actually there's nothing happening. Why? Because I don't have a constructor defined in my year helper. If I have defined a constructor, empty constructor, what will happen? It will go through that as well. Right? Then, now we are going to execute the get the current year. See what happens. Right? Okay, it still comes here. Why? We are actually testing this component. Right? Now we have only simulated what? System dot datetime dot now dot whatever is only simulated, right? See what happens here. I mean, it's not going to the system here. It's coming here, right? And it is executing my code, right? And okay, you can't see that. When you go here, so here it is. This is how you should use that. So I will clear on this. These are very simple examples, right? But by looking at a code and identifying how to mock is a different thing, right? Okay. So I will close this solution. I will be able to share this code, but the next code that I am showing, I won't be able to share. So don't ask me, right? This is actual project that is being done, and I will show you few very bad unit tests first. one few unit tests that are created by me to test one, right? Don't try to understand this code. This is something who actually scanning documents and capturing their data and even facilitating like certain highlighting of area of the document and capturing the text out of that, right? So it's kind of weird technology, I don't understand as well. So don't ask me much questions about the code that is actually written in the application. I will explain the test of it, right? Okay. Now we are going to actually test one method in this class. This is actually trying to create a folder, right? Provided a parent folder ID plus title and a description, it will create a new folder under that parent folder, right? So this is the intention of the function, and this code is not written by me. The original person who has developed has written this code. So I just actually tried to test this method. That's it. First, I had to understand this method. It was again a bit of difficult because this is dependent on MongoDB, something like that. So I didn't know what is MongoDB even. So I didn't want to install that on my laptop or anything. Trying to do that, I just went through the code and tried to understand the code, and I found the places I need to count or to use space. Right? Okay. So first thing is I need to test whether this title, if the title is empty or null, it should return this particular exception. So I should properly test that. And then if the parent folder ID is with empty, then it should send me this particular exception with the particular message. Right? Okay. Then there's another class, I don't know what this class does, but however this class should, this get method should be fake. Why? Whatever the thing that is written by this get method should be an expected value to this particular method that I am testing. Right? If it is returning some unexpected value, it is a problem of that particular method, not a problem of this particular method. So we should test that under the unit test of folder collection get, not here. Right? And if we get some kind of unit test error here because of a dependency from the get method, how should I know which is actually causing the error? There will not be a way. Right? So thing is, we should not rely on actual folder collection get method. It should be a simulated method. So you got it, right? Then I should test this parent folder null scenario, right? And now this part that again, this part that I should not care about how it really works. Again, it should be simulated and it should be working, right? And this folder collection insert should be fully fake or not, right? Okay. How to do that? First of all, I'll show you one test. Like this. I'm going to test folder creation, test new folder success. That means I'm going to kind of test happy part kind of. That means I provide all the parameters correctly and test it. Now if I check the code coverage of this test, right? Do you guys know what is code coverage? What is code coverage? How much of a code is executed and tested by a test? Simple as that, right? Now, when I run the code coverage, okay, in the services, the navigation service, in the create folder method, it is covering 81% of that code, right? All these red parts are not covered. The other parts are highlighted in kind of blue, is actually executed and tested using this particular test, right? Then I need to implement few tests for testing these scenarios as well, right? For the time being, we will just forget about this success one. I will show you how to test for empty folder title because you will need to understand this, right? Okay. What I am going to do is take the root folder, right? Why? We can't depend on the actual folder that is existing in the file system or a database or somewhere, right? So I don't care where this is stored. I am going to fake this, right? Okay. So I am going to create a new root folder using the necessary object model, and I am even assigning a new GUI, right? And I am proposing new folder description, and since I am testing empty scenario, the exception receiving, I am passing test folder string empty, right? Then in the shim's context, what I do is now in the fakes, the entity collection is actually entity collection available in the real development. I am using the shim entity collection which is generated by fakes, and I am asking its constructor to be what? An empty method, right? Because I don't care. I don't care whether it connects to it. Actually, this particular method is going to connect to a repository database and a file system file set, and it keeps the connection information kind of thing. That is happening within this construction. So I am fully ignoring that part. Why? I am not going to use any of those things, right? Okay. Then I even in the service also I am going to use an empty constructor, right? So that will be the executing part. Then actually I can pass any value here. This should be actual repository database name, but what I am doing here is just passing the word repository. Even I pass XYZ, this just works. Why? It doesn't matter. It doesn't execute the actual construct, right? Then okay, this is the tricky part. Now you have the option to I think my time is up, right? So I'll be very quick. You have the option to use expected exception attributing with this, right? But it doesn't verify whether your exception message is same, right? So if you want to verify on the exception message, you can catch the exception here and do that. But what I have done using this class is if anybody wants, I can share this code part. It's my implementation, right? It's my assert. This thing. It actually does is action invocation will happen from here, and centralized manner it will test for the expected type of exception and the message validity. And if the message, I have created two overloads here. If you are provided with the message, it will test the message as well. Otherwise, it will only check the exception type, right? So this code part, if anybody wants, let me know. I will share. Actually, I have copied certain person's code and enhanced it a bit, right? So I will provide the exact link to that person's work plus this one as well, if anybody is interested, right? So what really happens is, with this one, it actually looks for the argument exception with what? Given this message, folder title should not be empty, right? So this is how it should, right? Okay, I'm not going to debug and show you these things because we don't have time for that. Integration these things with DHPL Building. Right? I will quickly let you know how to do that. So once you name your this thing as, if you use the test assembly name with test word, it will automatically be picked by your build definition to execute tests, right? Or you can name it any way you like and make sure part of that name is assigned in the build definition with few asterisks, and then you will pick that assembly and execute. Right? Have you seen a build definition? No? These kind of test.dlls will be used to test, right? So that is one way to do that. And if you want to get the code coverage out of this, you can use the run settings file log. You can enable code coverage directly from here. Right? So once you execute something like this, it will even show you all the executed tests as well. Right? See? Right? So this is possible. So if anybody has any questions, actually I will give you the sample code, and now when I am posting about this one, it will be a little late because I need to first explain how to have this environment ready first. Installing DFS, configuring DFS, installing a build server, and configuring it to work using internal network. After those posts only, I will be able to put these things up in the work. So if anybody wants this fast, let me know your email, so I will try to do it. Okay? So hope you have understood something about unit testing, and I hope you will start doing unit testing as developers, because it is really, really important to test your components. Then you don't have to extensively use these things, right? Use it for at least for the most important components, like altitude meter, whatever the core parts of your system. Yes, write few unit tests. It's better to have few than none. Right? Okay. So happy coding. Thanks. Someone can let me know.
So first, in the framework was introduced in .NET Framework 3.5, and we included 2008. And there are some couple of major versions with 4, 5, 6, and now we are using 6.0.2. So I'll just go to the slides, right? So I can upload the slides. We'll focus more on demo. Right. So this is the developer workflow structure of Entity Framework. So let's say there are three main categories: model first, database first, and code first. Let's say if you are a designer, so you will be using model first and database first. If you like coding more, you will be using code first, right? So if you are going to create a new database, you will be using model first. If you are going to use existing database, you will be using database first. And so whether it's a new database or existing database, you can both run through code first. Right? So I want you to design and I'm creating so a couple of slides. Right, then let's go through the demos. First, I'll be creating 4 applications. One is for model first, one is for database first, and other 2 using code first, that is for new database and for an existing database. Right? Okay, I have created some empty applications, they have control applications. So this is my model first, right? So I'm going to add a new ADU.NET Integrator model, and I'll keep the name as it is. So now I'm going to do is model first, which is, so I'll be creating an empty model, right? Okay, so here's my designer. I'll just go through because these two are very much simple in comparing to the corpus, right? So I'll just add an entity, let's say employee, and here it's asking for my primary key, so I'll just name it as employee, right? So then I can add some scalar properties as well as some navigational properties. Let's say I am adding a first name, and let's say I am adding a new entity, this department, and again I am adding a scalar property which is, let's say, department description, right? And let's say I want to create a relationship between these two, which is one employee can belong to only one department, where one department can have many employees. So I'm going to create association, and my relationship is this, and you can change, you can do whatever you want. I mean, whatever relationship. And when you're creating an association, it will give you the navigational properties. So here you can, if you have a look at properties, so it's, we can set the properties, like the type, which is we see the primary key likewise, right? So, and if you want to create a database, generate database from model. This one, I think. Here it's asking you to use the entity version of entity framework, and this will give me the SQL query to create the databases and all. Now I can simply run this query. Once the query is been completed, if I go through my SQL server, let me check. DB. So this one I have previously created. So it has created the departments and employees table. Right. Now let's say I want to do some data access for that. Once I compile this project, so these are like text transformation files, right? These are the ones which will create my classes. Actually, what entity framework does is he will be modeling your data structure using classes, right? So for my employee table, he has created the employee class. For my department table, he has created a department class. And inside let's say department class, he has created some properties, department ID and department description, right? And for this, he has created a property which is of type recollection. So what this is for listing out, the all employees of department. and he has modified this using a virtual keyword, which will enable a feature in entity framework which is called lazy loading, right? So you can learn once you know the basics, you can learn about those stuff. So, and he has this employee class, and now we have some modeling classes, right? And we need to expose these. And he has done it using here, which is inheriting on the DB context. In here, he is exposing our two tables as DB sets, right? And these are also type virtual, right? Now let's say I want to do some data access. I'm going to use this class here. I can add department, right? Department, so employees. Say. And department ID is an identity column, so I don't need to put some value in it. So I'll just say and then I have to push this change value to the database. Here I can call this save changes, right? Once I have been added changes, so it's printing me out well, which is I have successfully inserted down some data, right? Now this is called model bus, which is where I have created a database and I have modified some. I have inserted some rows. Okay, now let's say I want to create I have existing DB and I want to create the model from it. So for that, I'm going to use this approach, which is database first. Again, I'm going to enter model, and here now it should generate from database. Let's say connection is string, and here connection string will be saved as this thing. And here I can choose what are the tables and all, like this. Okay, so he has created the model and the relationship is there. And now what I can do is, I can, same as the previous, using this derived context, which is demoing entities, I can, do some data, right? Okay, I'll be rushing through because we don't have much time, right? So, the thing that is database, right? So, these two approaches are mainly for, the people who hate for some coding, right? So, and these are the things that I love most. Which is code first choosing new database, right? Okay, for this, now let's say I have those two classes. This public class, let's say department. see here I have not mentioned any primary keys here, right? So I have not added any property or something. So there's nothing, right? So same as this, I will create another. Say full name. Now I'm going to add that relationship, right? So my employees belong to a department. Type is department. For that, to enable AC loading, I'm just putting virtual, right? So it's that simple. Now I have two tables, model. Now I need to expose these, right? For that, I'm going to create a class. Let's say my content, which is deriving from. And now I should expose these tables as DB sets, right? Department. Okay, so now I have some I have department model, employee model, and my context, which is a derived context, which will expose these two tables, right? So I'm going to go to my main, and here I'm putting a using because I want to free up my resources after the control leaf using, right? So using my context. Let's say I want to add same as previous. Okay, now what I should do is I should save this, change it, right? Okay. So up to now, have I modified any primary keys? No, right? So if you are not clear on what I am telling now, please do let me know, right? Because I'm actually rushing through because we don't have time. So if you are not clear of anything, please do let me know, right? So okay. So have I mentioned any connection strings here? No, right? So okay. So let me run this. Okay, ran, no errors. So there's a new department added, but where? Any idea? Huh? What is default? Inside update, there's no update folder here. Okay, so it's right. The connection string is here, which says the connection factory is local DB connection factory, right? So what is that? Have you ever heard of local DB? Huh? Okay. So with Visual Studio 2012, it comes with the before Visual Studio 2012. The explicit Intel framework uses exclusive express, right? With Visual Studio 2012, it uses database called local DB, and it is coming in the same as in Visual Studio 2013, right? new, let's say I want to add a new column for my employee table, which is username, right? So now what I should do is now I should migrate this existing database to a next level, right? Which is the database with the username, a column or username, right? So that I can use this package manage console. So first what I'm going to do is I'm going to enable migration for this particular database, right? For that I have to type this command. You can type like you can type here. Once I am modified, right? So the migration is now enabled, right? So you can see a configuration class here, which is the configuration class for migration, right? Here you have some couple of things, and I don't want you to change those things. Here it has created another class, which is the migration class, right? Here you have two methods, which is for upgrading the database and for downgrading the database. So initially if I downgrade, so I'll be losing all these tables, right? If I upgrade, I'll be creating the tables. So it's clear, right? So any questions up to now? No, right? So now what I'm going to do is, so I have modified this employee class, adding a username column, and now I want to migrate, right? So I'm going to add a migration, and here I have to specify a name, a meaningful name. So I would say add a username, right? So once I run this, it will create another class. So the upgrade method does is, it will add the column to the table employee. The column is username. So the downgrade method, what is the downgrade method? So it should remove the username column, right? So okay, now I have the migration and I want to push these changes to the database, so that I can update database command. Once I run this, so I can see the new username column added, right? Okay, now let's say I'm going to play around with this, right? So now let's say, okay, first of all let me add the user first, I mean employee. So, okay, another thing. So have I mentioned any primary keys for this table? No, right? So that's because if my property contains the word ID, the entity framework will be treating it as a primary key, right? So I didn't mention anything. So here again, I don't have to mention the primary key, which is employee ID. Now let's say I want to change the primary key into username, right? But I still, the employee ID is identity column, but I will keep it as it is. But still, I want the username to be treated as a primary key, right? So actually, in entity framework, right, there are two ways of doing it, right? Let's say if you are going to override entity framework convention, you can use two ways. One is called data annotation, and other is called event tape, right? So in data annotations, what we can do is we can just put a attribute here saying a key, right? And it is coming from the component model. So instead of that, there's another thing called Fluent API. There's no definition for Fluent API. What Fluent API does is, it helps us to write more fluent codes. Right? I'll show you how to write those. So I'll be using Fluent API because using Fluent API we can do many things. We can do more things. We can do the same things as data annotations, but with more. Right? So I'll be using it. So to use the Fluent API, I'm going to use overriding method. This on model creating, and here I'm going to modify the entity. What? Have you been listening what I'm saying? So I'm going to modify what? Name. Employee. And this is actually what this is Fluent API, right? So it is giving you some like we are writing in English. It's giving you the methods. So I'm going to change the key into username, right? Right. Since when I'm changing the primary key, my employee ID becomes just integer value. So its identity property is removed. So I have to set back the identity in because I hate put some value for employee ID. So here what you can do is again the entity property. This is how you can access these properties, right? Employee ID should has this generated database option. Which is identity. Right. So for up to now I've been using the Fluent API. So now how am I supposed to push these changes to the existing database? How? Yeah, so for that what I should be doing is I should be again using package management console. So I am going to create another migration. Let's say I have it done here, column shift, right? So when I run this command, it will be creating another migration class. What upgrade method does is it will add a primary key username and it will drop the existing first. It will override the column username, then it will drop the existing one, and then it will make the username as a primary key, right? So what downgrade method is the other way around. So now again I'm pushing the changes. Okay. Now if I refresh, see the primary keys are changed, right? And my data is still there, right? Nothing changed. Okay. So let me add the employee again. Now if I have a look at data, code is added with the incrementing employer ID, right? Okay. So now let's say I want to change the column display name. For an example, some DBAs, right? So they like, instead of using camel, so they like putting a underscore, right? So do I going to change the properties? So if so, I will have to change all the properties, right? I mean the same property, the places. So not that. So I will have the same property as here. Here in my Fluent code, I am going to use and here my entities department, properties, department description should have this. And again I am going to add a migration. So make sure to put a meaningful name here. So I'll just here, so I'll just put one. And again update the database. Right? So the column values, column display name is changed and there's no data loss. Right? Okay. So now what is this? So this is code first using a not existing new database. Right? Now let's see how to create a code first using existing database. And for this you will have to install Entity Framework toolkit. Right? You can download it from the internet. Once you have installed it, you are getting this thing, this menu. Under this Entity Framework, Reverse Engineer code first. So let's say DemoDB. So now it's creating all the classes for me. See, I have the these entity classes and then some maps, right? So this is nothing but for it's configuring the properties of each entity, right? So same as this, using this DemoDB context. Same as previous, I can add employees. Let me add one first. I'll add a department.